And away we go. Hello and welcome. My name is Shannon Kemp, and I'm the Chief Digital Manager of Dataversity. We'd like to thank you for joining the latest installment of the monthly Dataversity webinar series, Advanced Analytics with William McKnight, sponsored today by Looker. Today, William will be discussing data pipelines in the enterprise and comparison. Just a couple of points to get us started. Due to the large number of people that attend these sessions, you will be muted during the webinar. For questions, we will be collecting them via the Q&A in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, or if you like to tweet, we encourage you to share highlights or questions via Twitter using hashtag ADV Analytics. And if you'd like to chat with us or with each other, we certainly encourage you to do so. Just click the chat icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen for that feature. And as always, we will send a follow-up email within 2 business days containing links to the slides, the recording of the session, and any additional information requested throughout the webinar. Now, let me turn it over to Joel from Looker for a brief word from our sponsor. Joel, hello and welcome.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody, for your patience with us as we get this thing started. I know we've had some technical difficulties, and I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to listen to us and hear our story here. Looks like, Shannon, there are some questions from people having trouble with audio as well on the WebEx. So I'll keep talking while you answer those questions as we proceed. Great. So if you can move on to the next slide here, I'm just going to try and set the stage as we move into William's conversation. We go forward around insights-driven businesses. So we're all here talking about data, and we're talking about data because we believe it has value, and we hopefully have some experience in data, and we know that it makes a difference. But our analysts also agree, industry analysts have seen that businesses that harness data well, that implement a digital strategy, a data-driven strategy, become data-driven businesses, are better businesses than those that don't, right? They grow faster, people like their products more, and they're more capable of succeeding during times of disruption, which is particularly important in the last 14 months with the global disruption of the pandemic. Data has really made a difference to businesses that are struggling during this disruptive time, and it's helped fuel the rapid growth of those that have grown during this disruptive time. So we know it's really important. So what do we do? So Shannon, for the next slide, what Gartner is seeing is that people are rebalancing their spending. They're rebalancing their approach to their business to fuel digital transformation. And digital transformation is a phrase I hate because it really has no semantic meaning, right? It could mean basically anything. But what we're talking about specifically here is the use of data to fuel, grow, and drive competitive differentiation with your business. And so what Gartner has seen is that a huge number of people are just increasing their investment in business intelligence and data analytics. And it's that top investment priority for tech leaders because of the value that they see as we go forward. So, Shannon, if we can move to the next slide really quickly. So what is Looker? So Looker provides a universal semantic layer that connects into your data wherever it may live. We support over 60 different SQL dialects. It allows you to model that data once, define metrics once in one place, and then, and this is very, very important, to fuel however people want to experience that data or consume that data to make the business move forward. So you might be an organization like Sunrun, the solar services provider. They do business intelligence and analytics, very much a traditional approach to business intelligence with Looker, using reports and dashboards, but also being much more integrated into their business overall. And it makes a big difference to their ability to make their customers happy. But you might be doing things more like integrating insights or driving data into workflows in a place where the data consumer may not recognize that they're actually data-driven or a data consumer. A classic example might be to automate workflows with data so that when certain thresholds are passed, maybe like sales loss, you turn out a new email campaign if you see a reduction in a metric. Or maybe it might be integrated directly into a sales dashboard that you get when you log into a retailer, or you log into a payment processor like Stripe, where you can find out information about what you've done in the past. You're not there to do data. You're not there to do reports, but you use data every day. It's seamless and native to your experience. And last but not least, Looker fuels a large number of custom applications that are run on data via our APIs. So you can always, reach out to Looker. We'd be happy to talk to you about Looker for a million years. But the takeaway from this one is that people consume data in a variety of ways in your business to fuel it. And what you really need to do if you're going to modernize, if you're going to transform, is make sure that everyone who needs data gets it where and when they need it in a way that feels native and is low friction, so that the data can have an impact on your business. Can we move to the next slide, please, Shannon? So Looker is a little bit different from what you might find as a BI tool, because we're more than just BI. We really are that modeling and analytics layer that sits underneath a BI reporting and dashboarding experience. We have an in-database architecture, so if you are using a database that you've invested heavily in, we will leverage the features of that database. And as I said before, we can speak the native SQL language of more than 60 database dialects, so several hundred databases are supported by Looker. We have a semantic modeling layer that is capable of being presented to everyone in your business so that you have consistent metrics and consistent understanding of the data that's driving the business. And our design philosophy around API is to make everything work via API. So if you want to customize, if you want to access the data that is governed via Looker, you can do that from any system in your organization. And we are multi-cloud at our very core. We support data that exists in whatever cloud you'd like. So like I said, more than 60 dialects, but those dialects could be in other clouds as long as we can connect seamlessly to them. And we can do that in a secure way as well. You can host Looker itself in whatever cloud you want. We will host it for you in Google's cloud. We will host it for you in AWS, and we can host it for you in Microsoft Azure as well. And you can always host it yourself, at the place you would like. And you can also extract data, like I said, via the API into whatever cloud you want to do. So whatever your cloud strategy is, Looker will support it, so that we're very open in an open cloud environment. And can we move quickly to the next slide, please? So for what William is talking about today, is going to be about data pipelines and ETL. And so I thought it might make sense to just give you a few seconds on where Looker fits in an ETL flow. Looker is really good at using the governed data model to present governed data via the warehouse itself as a form of in-warehouse ETL. So you can normalize data in Looker, improve its quality and clean it, and then present that data out via the Looker APIs to whatever needs to consume it, or you can materialize it as a table or set of tables inside the database for tools which aren't Looker to get to. So we can do that. We can also increase the performance and efficiency of tables post-ETL by doing smart work around common and popular or large and expensive queries, building in database extracts, for example, which are always up to date, or optimizing how those queries operate. So in a flexible and agile, easy to iterate kind of a way that's very, very analyst-friendly as we go. So Shannon, last slide, and thank you everyone for your patience with our weird slide formatting and everything. Like I said, we had some technical issues at the beginning, but just one last thing about Looker. So Looker's goal in life here is to empower people with the smarter use of data. We've got a ton of people developing against the Looker platform, thousands of customers, and most of the customers are using Looker not just for BI, but taking the data beyond Looker into other types of data experiences or other ways of consuming that data. And as I mentioned before, multi-cloud and very flexible, supporting Google Cloud, of course, because we're now part of Google, but also Amazon, Azure, Snowflake, IBM, and some, let's say, 55 other database dialects, depending on what you need. So with that, I just want to say thank you very much for your patience again. with our technical difficulties. And then, Shannon, I will hand it over to William to take it from here so that we can get into the meat of data pipeline stuff.
That sounds great. Thank you, Joel, so much, and thank you for your patience. And as we work some hacks here to make it all work, I really appreciate everybody. Love the community. And if you have questions for Joel, he will be joining us in the Q&A at the end of the webinar today, so feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A portion for Joel. If you have questions for Joel about his presentation or about Looker, we will, again, get those to the end at the Q&A. And now let me introduce our speaker for the series, William McKnight. William has advised many of the world's best-known organizations. His strategies form the information management plan for leading companies in numerous industries. He is a prolific author and popular keynote speaker and trainer. He has performed dozens of benchmarks on leading database, data lakes, data streaming, and data integration products. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to William to get his presentation started. William, hello and welcome.
Hello, and thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Looker. Thank you, everybody. Let me add my thanks to everybody out there for hanging in there with our foibles there at the top of the hour. I promise you we will get to the bottom of it. Like Shannon, I've done hundreds of these. I have had some. Have had this experience before, and you know what? Sometimes out of these humble beginnings come great things. So I hope this is one of those, and I'm going to trust that it is because I've done some research around this, and I'm sharing that with you here today. And it's about something very important to overall data management. Now, Joel talked about how important data is to our organizations. We know this. We've heard it. I hope we actually live it, too, by the way. I hope we carry this message with us in our day-to-day. I know it's hard now with a lot of us being remote to feel like you're carrying a message to the organization, but we really do need to do that. And I think it's really on our shoulders to do that as people in the know in regards to data. So let me just hope to move the needle a little bit for you today in terms of being in the know, especially around data integration. So I'll give the old next slide bit. So next slide, Shannon. This slide should say data integration is about leveraging data. Yes, indeed it is. Enterprises and organizations from every industry and scale are working to leverage data. In order to do that, we know we need data integration. As a matter of fact, it's never been more important than now. You might think, well, it's becoming less important because we're just dropping the data in a data lake, right? No, nobody's just doing that. Nobody is just doing that. Nobody is fully centralized. Nobody has a one-size-fits-all. Nobody ever did. And so we are moving data around far beyond how we ever have. And as a matter of fact, I must say there's no end in sight to it. And we have to move along. We cannot carry forward the old ETL paradigm, and there's more involved today with the machine learning stack, of course, and there's more to data than a batch ETL. So let's look at some of the capabilities that we're going to want to have. We're going to want it to be cloud native. So next slide, Shannon. Cloud native. We want it to be intelligently driven. You want this. You want this. You want it to be intelligently driven. Only that way can you keep up a pace with the market, with the business needs, and so on. Intelligently driven automation suggests and generates new data pipelines between source and target without manually mapping your design, or shall I say, without full manual mapping and design. So it will take you down the path. It will use experiences that it knows about that you don't know about, and it will use some inference and so on. So while the requirements of data integration keep growing, I'm not necessarily convinced that the physical demands, or shall I say the labor demands of data integration need to keep growing with all this because of where the tools are bringing us today. And a good label for it is data orchestration. Data orchestration, I like that. It's like you're the conductor and you're conducting all the data moving throughout the organization, making sure it moves in harmony and creates a nice symphony, if you will. You're managing the ebb and flow of data throughout the system, determining what data is analyzed, stored, and you're managing all the changes that happen to it. What happens to the data upstream? What's happening to the data downstream, the data that we're picking up? And is there new data occurring within the organization that needs to go somewhere? Where? Well, that's the job of the data architect. Sometimes that's also the data integration lead, but that's a very important role as well, where all this data is going. So today we're focused on moving that data around, hopefully to good places. Next slide, Shannon. We'll look at the data integration platforms of today. These are the platforms that I studied for the report. And by the way, I'll give you the link to the report if you want more information on what I'm talking about here today. I'll do that at the end of this session. But these are the leading vendors, and they're not all one size fits all. They're certainly not the same. Some of them are going to fit in ecosystems, certain ecosystems. Some of them are more what I call heterogeneous. And I will pick those off for us as we go along here through them. And some are more up and coming for a machine learning environment. Some are more just stable for legacy and inching legacy forward. And some are what we call data prep tools, which are more to do this in the hands of an end user or business department or some such thing. I'll go into all I won't go into all of these that you see here today. I'll go into more or less the ones that I get asked about the most. Some are more or less entrenched in environments, like Oracle is in the Oracle environments, and they're not open to change, so I won't go into that. And SAP for the SAP environment, same thing. But I'm going to talk a little bit about all the rest. And at the least, I would like to believe that you're going to walk away from this with an understanding of some terminology that other vendors are using other than maybe your favorite or the one that you're using today at your site, and maybe open your eyes to some other ways of doing things, knowing that there's many ways to skin this cat. These are not homogeneous by any stretch. So let's look at the capabilities for cloud data integration. Next slide, Shannon. And while I'm at it, next slide, Shannon, let's move right into comprehensive native connectivity. Yes, native connectivity. Not the old JDBC, ODBC, not those slow protocols, but native connectivity to all types of enterprise data and software as a service solutions. Now, this requires that vendor, on your counterparty here, your counterparty partner in data integration, if you will, your vendor, has done some specific work around that. This doesn't happen magically. This is specific work that they've done around a source. And so we can sit here and talk about, and I will, talk about hundreds or thousands of connectivities that a tool has inherent within it now. And that's all great. That gives you some good ideas. Make sure that they're the ones, though, that are important to you. And make sure that they include the ability to mass ingest the data regardless of data type. And have other integration methods, which is going to lead us to our next slide. Shannon, multi-latency data integration. Today, an enterprise needs to have a variety of latencies at their disposal for ingesting data. So it's nice when one tool, like your favorite tool, can be used for batch, real-time streaming, change data capture, or any combination. Now, frequently, I'll get into projects that have lots of sources, let's say 20, and I'll make a plan for the first 10, and we'll button it down. We'll know what's up. We'll know whether it's going to be batch or real-time streaming, etc. But we've got to get moving, and so we're not going to do the source systems analysis on the latter 10, which may be less important. But nonetheless, when we get there, we're going to need to move that data, and probably pretty quickly. Once you get into a project and it starts to pick up pace, you know you don't have a long time for analysis at that point. So it's nice when your tool is able to go in a variety of different directions. And like I said here, second bullet, such decisions are often made after project commencement, and the enterprise needs to be able to adjust the ingestion modality with agility. Not every source, and this is an understatement of the day, I would say, but not every source is going to be compatible with real-time extraction from it. So we have to be aware of that. So next slide, Shannon, we'll look at data integration patterns. Data integration must support various patterns as well, not just modalities or latencies, but patterns, ETL, ELT, and streaming. So you can have some options there as well. Should be a visual code-free development environment, and that probably goes without saying. Most of them are today, but it should be one that you like, that's good, that works for you. That's important. It's an important part of this. So, and that also helps to increase productivity and the efficiency of development, deployment, and maintenance. So we like that. Data integration pipelines should include event-based and bulk processing in batch, leveraging templates and wizards. These are some of the things that we're going to look for. Next slide, Shannon, is data quality and data governance. And this is over the top. This is what we expect. Now, do you need a separate data quality tool or not? Probably not. Most implementations can do with what's embedded within the ETL tool and write their custom transformations as part of this. But that does require some discipline on your part to actually get in there and figure out what those good custom definitions or custom customizations, is that right? Custom customizations, what they are. And so this is all part of data governance. Data governance will sort of dictate to the organization what the policies are around data. And in the 100 or 200 or 1,000 data integrations that you have running in your enterprise today, they all need to follow it. So it's great when those capabilities can be expressed once and utilized by that tool, whatever it is utilized within the organization. And as I have tried to emphasize, organizations are complex today when it comes to data architecture and data integration. The tool should have the built-in ability to cleanse, enrich, and standardize any data. Should have capabilities to discover, classify, and document data elements, and based upon the profile, automatically build the applicable data quality rules. Now, it's not necessarily rules that you need to adhere to 100%, but just like with the data integrations, it is great when suggestions can be made. Do not blindly follow these suggestions. And finally, something that's just exploded on the scene here is the data marketplace. It seems like enterprises really got the message that they could utilize data that's not necessarily generated by their own four walls of the corporation. And that's happened in the past few years. And so frankly, it's a pulpit I've been on for probably 10 years or so and seen organizations, really reap some benefits of doing this. But now it's become more commonplace. And the data marketplaces are opening up access to a wide variety of governed data in an Amazon-like shopping experience. Yes, it doesn't have to be complicated, and it democratizes all kinds of data. So that's a good thing that you want to have. So be sure that you're aware. Hopefully, I'm giving you a checklist that you can take to your current vendor or to the marketplace, depending upon where you are in your cycle of things with data integration. And I'm not saying every vendor has to be knocking it out of the park on every one of these, but at least you will know where you have to fill in some gaps as you go forward, because these are all things that's going to be table stakes for data integration in the future. Next slide, Shannon, data cataloging and metadata management. So cataloging data is a recommended first step to discovering and understanding your enterprise data, but beyond that is the utilization of that data, that metadata in particular. So the ability to connect and scan metadata for all data types, you want to know what those types are, whether they're relevant to you, and have the ability to gather and leverage sensor metadata, which is becoming a huge part of a lot of IoT implementations, for example. So like if you want to understand if there's been a change in the data stream, that shouldn't be something that you have to monitor separately. It should be able to advise you of what the anomalies are in the stream. And automatic classification, tagging, and enrichment of metadata, and some data management platforms, this will be my last read here, but automatically build data pipelines when data consumers browse for data in the catalog and select a destination. So there you go. It's getting ahead of you here and laying some tracks out there ahead of you. Next slide, Shannon. Enterprise trust at scale, a thing that we want to look for, especially in regulated industries like financial, like healthcare. The certification to industry standards, the ones that are appropriate for you. This does indicate that that vendor has gone under quite a bit of rigor to make sure that as far as the tool is concerned, that it is compatible. Now, ultimately, enterprise trust falls back on the enterprise to make sure that policies are enacted and met, to make sure that data is kept under trust. And these are some of the certifications that we've looked for in the past, depending upon the client, of course. SOC, SOC 2, HIPAA, ISO, Privacy Shield, and you all can probably tell me 10 others for your particular organization. So there you go. It's nice when the tool can detect sensitive data and protect against breaches. After all, Social Security numbers do have a pattern to them, don't they? So that is something that these tools should be able to help you with. Think about these data integration tools as not just there to help us move data, but there to pick up some of the work that we used to do at the source, so extend its reach into the source and extend its reach into the destination. And by that, I mean not just landing data, but processing upon that data, doing the right thing by that data according to what it is seeing in the data, not just letting the data land somewhere and wait for a human to come along and do a very natural thing with that data, whatever it may be. Now, the next slide, Shannon, is artificial intelligence and automation. And this is a big one. This is a blanket one, if you will. But we believe AI is paramount to automating the exponential growth in data management tasks and future-proofing technology. Data management has the most potential of any data platform domain to benefit from utilizing AI and machine learning. I've already talked about some of this, some of the automation, and surely that's a huge part of it. But there's more to it as well. Like I was just saying about reaching into that data and doing the next best step, whatever that is upon that data. That means knowing, and that means artificial intelligence. So as we all know, a lot of data needs to be brought to bear on AI, and that's actually creating a lot of the data integration projects that are happening out there today because we do not have that data ready today. We haven't captured it all, or we have it in the wrong place, or we just want to move it to its own place because the places that we have data in the organization are pretty crowded right now. And so for all these reasons, good, bad, and otherwise, we are moving data around to take advantage of the artificial intelligence future. Now, the last slide, Shannon, in terms of the things that we are looking for is around ecosystem and multi-cloud. So some organizations, and this could be a whole presentation in and of itself, some organizations are committing whole-scale lock and barrel to a given cloud platform, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, maybe IBM, et cetera. And if that's you, great, but most companies are still in this hybrid mode where there's a little bit of this, there's a little bit of that, and who knows about the future. So these hyperscalers, it is great when the platform, the data integration platform, can run on all of them, the big three at least. And we also look for the good old financial strength, company strategic partnerships, implementation partnerships. I look at leadership, et cetera. And that kind of rounds out the list of things that you want to look for today. Everything else that I left off, that's all table stakes. They all got them. These are the things that you need to look for. So let's look at the vendors and see how they stacked up a little bit, at least, against some of this criteria. So next slide, Shannon just says vendor analysis. So we will, by the way, before I jump to the next slide, I just want to say this is not enough time for me to piecemeal out, exactly when each of these tools is good, when they're not so good. I'm not advocating any tool today. There's a little bit of that in the paper if you want to get it, but I certainly do not believe that I have time enough to advocate. So if you hear any advocation words, I don't mean it. I am just trying to, again, meet my goal that I set out up front, which is to expose you to some of the other tools and some of the terminologies they use and the ways that they do things for the next time that you have to get data integration. So with that, let's move on, Shannon, to AWS Glue. And this is alphabetical order. And this came about in 2017. I'm pointing out the good. I'm pointing out the differentiators for all of these and the terminology. And by saying that this is serverless and not saying that necessarily for the others doesn't mean that they're not serverless as well. I just think AWS does a good job at that. So that's why I'm calling it out. I'm calling out the things that are good differentiators for these products, okay? So AWS Glue is the main tool, and so that's why I'm calling it out here, but they have other tools for data integration as well, for sure. But if I'm putting together a data architecture and I don't have very specific need that requires one of the other things that comes from AWS, we're talking Glue. So let's talk about Glue a little bit more. It's a fully managed ETL service. You can use it outside of AWS, by the way, and it has some advantages there as well, but it's primarily used within AWS environments. Glue can leverage as a source or target any database with a compatible JDBC driver. This allows it to work with platforms outside of AWS. And as of April of last year, Glue supports streaming ETL. You'll see that some of the vendors have a separate product for streaming, and Glue, it's all kind of built into the one product of Glue. Glue really changed the industry quite a bit. Next slide is Azure Data Factory. So it has been likened to SQL Server Integration Services, and I put that out there because we all know and love that, right, over the years, that for the cloud. But it actually bears little resemblance to its conventional on-premise predecessor of SSIS. This was introduced in 2014, Azure Data Factory, that is, and that's the one I'm calling out in the Azure environment. And it's pretty good at some of the things that you see here, creating workflows for orchestrating data movement, transforming data between Azure resources, creating and scheduling pipelines. The most basic function that we use a lot is the copy data pipeline, which has the broadest reach in terms of source and target variety. And then there's also wrangling data flows, which is a code-free data exploration, prep, and validation service. But Azure Data Factory, its strong suit is really data replication, really good for that. It also has a different tool set for streaming, and that's called Azure Stream Analytics. So if you're all in on Azure, you're probably leaning in to the Azure Data Factory. And next slide, Shannon. We're going to look at Cloudera here. Now, you might say, Cloudera, are they in on this? Yes, they are in on this. They provide commercial support to quite a few open source projects, which put together create a nice machine learning pipeline environment. Nice advanced user interface, ELT approach, and I'm talking specifically now about NiFi, which they inherited from the Hortonworks acquisition, where it was Hortonworks Data Flow. And now it's Cloudera Flow Management, powered by Apache NiFi, I do believe. I just don't call it NiFi, so excuse me on that. But it's a general-purpose enterprise data integration tool, fast, easy, and secure, often found in a stack with Kafka. And we know about Kafka, right, is that as that hub for collecting and distributing data in real time. Really nice. You can set up tags and so on for that, which creates a nice orchestrated environment. Cloudera has built the shared data experience over the top of all of this. And I guess one thing to know is transformations are lightly supported within NiFi, so any needed transformations are expected to occur at the target, at the ELT, the T in that. If you download and use NiFi from GitHub directly for your needs, as is the case with most open source software, your security and data governance options are custom code or third party and limited. We don't really like to be limited in that. I'll also mention, since I'm on Cloudera, Flink, which Cloudera also provides the engineering for, is a specialist tool for advanced low latency stateful stream processing. So there you go. You're covered in that ecosystem, if you will. Finally, I'll mention NiFi integrates smoothly with your existing AWS infrastructure, including S3, EMR, Lambda, SQS, and NS. It also contains built-in support for data flows integrating Hadoop, Flume, Kafka, and a host of many other things. So that's an ecosystem that you'll have to commit to it, just like all of them, but can get you a lot of places. Now, Fivetran is a little bit different from the others that I have talked about, and I'll talk about some more that are like it, but I put them in the data prep category. I don't know if they like that anymore, or those companies, still use that, but anyway, in the early days of this industry, they certainly did, and so I'll say it. Fivetran was founded in 2013. It's designed for low setup, no configuration, no maintenance, data pipeline to lift data from operational sources and deliver it to a modern cloud data warehouse. and it's well suited for popular cloud apps like Salesforce, Stripe, and Marketer. If you're particularly keen on getting data out of those, you have some really nice things happening within Fivetran for you there. They did introduce transformation capabilities in the mid of 2019, so they've been moving along in terms of that. And I say every company needs data prep, even if you have one of these other what I'll call heterogeneous tools, or a tool that's going to work great within one environment like Azure Data Factory or what have you. You still would probably like to have some data prep. I don't know if you want to turn Azure Data Factory over to end users for their data integration needs. But Fivetran, you could feel much more comfortable with doing that and knowing that they're not going to burn the house down, if you will. And they're going to be able to do some things, kind of odds and ends things, kind of some edge things that may not be considered part of the enterprise data architecture. And you have to allow for this. I know I speak to a lot of people that are in central IT in these monthly advanced analytics webinars, and based on the feedback I get, I just have to say back that you have to allow that this is going to happen, that there's a lot of work for you to do, and the work has been morphing over the past few years to where guidelines need to be put in place and enforced in the right way. We could talk at length about what that is, what that looks like, but there's a place for these data prep tools. Fivetran, I'll talk about Matillion, Stitch, and next slide, Shannon, is Google. Google has Illuma, which is one of those, what I'll call a data pipeline tool. It was purchased in 2019 to help customers migrate to Google Cloud Platform. That is Illuma. But the more general GCP stack data integration tool is Cloud Data Fusion. It's the foundation of Google data integration. It offers 200 plus adapters that range from RDBMS, messaging, pretty much all the categories of things that you probably want to bring data from. Just make sure that the integration is there or the adapter is there. Of course, you can build your own if you like. Cloud Data Fusion supports batch real-time streaming and change data capture. We wanted that. They have that. It provides data governance, a platform for structured data. Now, what else do I say? Cloud Data Fusion it's different from Illuma, okay? It's a cloud-native data integration service. It's one of several Google data analytics services. Cloud Data Fusion supports preloaded transformation, so validating, formatting, and encrypting or decrypting, among other operations in a nice GUI, whereas Illuma lets developers transform data within the data pipeline before loading via something called the code engine, an in-browser Python environment. So either way, there you see the Google stack. They've got you covered. Moving on to the next slide, Shannon, we're going to talk a little bit here about IBM. They changed names of products very rapidly, and so I hope I'm up to date on this one because it's only a few months old, but information server for IBM Cloud Pak for Data, which includes capabilities for integration, quality, and governance. It actually, interestingly, has some reference numbers beyond IBM-centric accounts, so don't think it has to be IBM Cloud or anything. IBM, they also have IBM InfoSphere Information Server, which is available as a managed service on any cloud or self-managed for a customer infrastructure like a private cloud. So you take the latency style. There's a shared catalog called the Knowledge Catalog, and machine learning capabilities are used in the automatic generation of reusable data integration templates. It's something we look for in all of them, right? But they do a good job with it. Recipes, schema propagation, and assisted data discovery, classification, and PII data identification. So they have gone all in on those things. The Knowledge Catalog is an important part of the stack. It's comprised of data governance, quality, and consumption tools. Anything done on Cloud Pak for Data is captured in the Knowledge Catalog. It provides all the lineage and dependencies among catalog assets. So you can define business policies and classifications like data masking rules and apply policy enforcement for the architecture. We like that. That's the glue part of it. So the next one is a obviously heterogeneous platform that's going to work on all the clouds in all situations, Informatica. Their intelligent data platform includes native connectivity, data ingestion, data integration, data quality, pretty much comprehensive across the needs of DI from a broad perspective. Native connectivity to a broad set of data for all types of data. They do have I don't have it on here. Yes, I do. The fourth bullet, cloud mass ingestion. I want to point that out. Help customers ingest data from a variety of data, such as from files, databases, applications, in batch, to change data capture or retrieve. And Informatica's catalog vision, something that they're approaching here with the enterprise data catalog, is to be the catalog of catalogs. So reading all catalogs, incorporating that into a big catalog, and really trying to be the grand central station of your enterprise data. Acts on data governance, which I didn't mention on here, but it uniquely provides a data marketplace with a storefront experience. We talked about that before, so they're good at that, and has platform certifications along the lines of the ones that I said you might like before. Still the Switzerland of data. Next slide, Shannon, is Matillion. Matillion is a data prep tool, okay, like the others. I've talked about that and what that means, but it is upsizing these days. And so we'll see where it lands in a few years. It began life in 2015 as a tool specifically designed for Redshift, but it's expanded to BigQuery and Snowflake, and in 2020, Azure Synapse Analytics. Today, their tool has even broader breadth, and it has a migrate function to move or clone business logic and resources, dynamic ETL, it automates pipeline building, and there's an entry-level tool called Matillion Data Loader as well. But nice automated pipeline building, which is an important part of your stack. Finally, we get to the last tool I'm just going to cover at this depth, and that's Talend. Talend is an entire data ecosystem, cloud-independent play. Another thing that you'll want to go all in on. I mean, other than the data prep tools I mentioned, you want to go all in on these tools in the enterprise as much as possible, probably. Not to withhold any kind of progress, waiting for that remote department in the other country to come aboard with Informatica when you're using Talend or vice versa or what have you. But as much as possible, these all the ones really that I've mentioned here today have quite a bit of capabilities that unless you're getting in there, you're scratching the surface. And you don't want to be doing that. You want to be sure that you're going in deep with these tools, that you are exploiting everything possible that does the work that it can do and doesn't leave work for you to do manually that it could be doing. Talend has been around since 2005. It's an entire data ecosystem. They have Stitch, Data Loader, Data Integration, Pipeline Designer, Data Quality, Data Inventory, Data Catalog, Data Prep, Data Stewardship, API, and Application Integration. And so, yeah, APIs, that's a whole other topic there as well. Obviously, there are vendors that specialize in that, work with some of these tools. So you can have access to a wide variety of APIs. That's a specialist function, and we like to see the specialist API vendors getting their due in organizations as well where appropriate. So other new components in the fabric of Talend, the Talend Data Fabric, a single point of data intelligence, describes and scores data across all the data pipelines, the data inventory, that is. And this cuts down on the time required to find and consume data. Talend also has a variety of certifications, such as SOC 2, HIPAA, GDPR, CSA STAR, and Cyber Essentials in the UK. Whew. Quite a fast run through of a very important topic, and a lot of vendors in there. You don't need them all, but you're going to need probably more than one. And who knows if you're in the right one for you today. And there are other factors that come into play that mean that you'll be going with a different one in the future. So hopefully you're a little bit more aware. And these are my key takeaways and applications. Next slide, Chen, for the talk today. In the heterogeneous vendor category, we have 4 vendors: Cloudera, IBM, Informatica, and Talend. So completely heterogeneous, all clouds, In other words, it's great in all clouds. And move on to the next bullet. Cloudera with Knife Link and Scoop presents a compelling enterprise option for data fabrics and pipelines that will grow as these environments proliferate. Specialist providers are appropriate for a limited scope. Now, that's just my term, specialist providers. So maybe they're a data prep tool, so they have a limited scope of function that they can do, or maybe they're not necessarily limited, but practically speaking, going to work best in a given cloud environment like AWS, Azure, or GCP. So those we call specialists. You'll have some specialists, maybe as well as heterogeneous in the organization. So the next bullet is Google's data management and integration capabilities are high-end market, and it would be a strong option for any GCP project. So you feel real comfortable there. I get calls. I'm in AWS. Should I go with Glue? I'm in GCP. Should I go with Google? I'm in Azure. Should I stretch it a little bit and go with something else? Don't go with don't try to go with Glue in Azure or something like that. But there are times when you might go with one of the heterogeneous vendors in those environments. I shouldn't even just say there are times. There are many times when that might be the case. So you are you. You have your unique needs. You are trying to optimize for a given point in time. Hopefully that point in time is not just yesterday. It's at some point in the future that you're looking at, and targeting that and thinking about that as you go forward. AWS Glue is a great option for AWS projects. Oracle Data Integration is a strong lock for Oracle projects, and I say strong lock meaning that's what they seem to use most often, and it is fully expected that enterprise environments would have a heterogeneous vendor as well as a data prep vendor. I've made this point many times, but Fivetran Matillion or Stitch and maybe even some others, maybe like Illuma as well. And that brings me to where can you get your hands on more information on this topic? Should you want more information on the topic, I've cut it to cut.ly/datainf. Enjoy. And this brings me to the end of the formal part of the presentation. Back to you, Shannon, for any Q&A that we might have.
We do have some questions coming in, so I do want to get to that. And just to answer the most commonly asked questions, just a reminder, I will send a follow-up email by end of day Monday for this webinar with links to the slides and links to the recording, along with the additional information we've got here. And again, thanks to Joel and to you, William, for making this presentation happen under challenging circumstances. It was awesome. So diving in here, how can we use AI to support data integration? It came in a little bit before you talked about AI, but I wanted to ask it a little bit.
Well, I'll jump in on that, but I definitely want to hear Joel as well. But I think I did cover it as best I could. I think automation is a great way to look at this from the very beginning. Also, looking at landed data and determining what this means to the business and what the next best action should be based upon that landed data. Doing real data analysis on data. I think this is a domain. I didn't get into it much today because the vendors aren't there yet and maybe haven't realized yet, but I think these are the vendors that I've talked about here today, or these are the products that are really sitting on the goal of the organization and can be stretching their wings a little bit into data analysis of that data. And I think that's going to happen in the future, and I think that's going to come about due to AI. Now, I know Google has a lot of AI in their products. You could definitely argue that Google's products are trying to leverage all the AI that's coming out of Google, and that I think is a worthy goal for anybody, and is something that many are aspiring to with that particular platform. Joel, you have anything to add there about Looker?
Yeah, well, not Looker specifically, but I think when you look across the pipeline of the ecosystem, there's three places where it tends to play out. One is, and you mentioned this, sort of pre-landing. One is bringing in data and cleaning or prepping it in some way. AI can serve a role in that, in identifying anomalous data, finding errors, finding outliers, and helping us make sure that the data sets we have are clean or nice when they do land. That's a little bit less common now. We tend to use a more programmatic approach, right, during our ETL processes to clean up data, but AI has the possibility of being leveraged there. The second one, which I think is probably the most common right now, is, and you mentioned this also, William, which is transformation once it's landed already in a database, data warehouse. That would be things like sentiment analysis, interpretation of complicated data, which might be semi-structured or unstructured, so that it can then be analyzed in a more meaningful way. So, like pumping a Twitter feed through it for sentiment analysis is a classic example. So you can identify, brand anomalies or issues with perception from customers. And then the third one, which is interesting to consider, and there's a couple of new companies on there, CC Data and others, who are working on AI to do correlative analysis of data and identify key metrics. So if you have a desired metric that you want to, let's say, improve, let's call it sales in the Northern Hemisphere, companies like that can use AI and some advanced statistical processes to determine what inputs need to change in order to have the greatest impact on that output. So that'll help you identify not just what to change in the business, but also what metrics to track and how to do goaling. So sort of during the ETL process once it's landed, and then more of an automated analysis process are the three places I see AI being most useful over the next, let's say, 24 to 36 months. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
I love it. We have just a couple of minutes left, but I'm going to try and sneak in one more question here. Can you help in understanding what is data fabric?
You want to start with that one, William? You want me to?
Let's have you start on that.
Okay. So, look, historically, analytics and the analysis and usage of data has circled around the concept of centralization of that data, right? That data needs to be in one place and all in some sort of, kind of a monolithic database. And that's had a couple of issues. Again, historically, performance and scale were an issue with most databases, so we ended up with sort of a data lake concept where there's a ton of data in there, and it might have a SQL front end, but for analysis, but it might be still this concept of how do I get everything into the lake. And data fabric is much more along the lines of what you would consider a federated model, where the data resides in multiple locations, and the fabric manages access to and an understanding of what data is where at any given time, and helps you reduce duplication, et cetera. There are fundamental engineering and physical challenges with that model around things like latency and the fact that you have to manage the ultimate performance of data access based on all of the devices that hold the storage instead of managing it in one place. And there is a lot of, for lack of a better term, religion or deeply held belief as to what is the best solution. Is it a data lake? Is it a data fabric? I was just reading an article on EDWs versus data lakes versus data fabrics and where does the future lie. And with so many things in our industry, the answer is yes. All of these things are probably useful. I see a future where you have some tightly transformed data in your data lake that serves as essentially a virtual enterprise data warehouse. You have a data lake where the bulk of your data resides, but you also have a fabric layer that lets you reside data in other locations, but you still have access to it. And you do that because it's cheap and easy, and you're willing to accept perhaps some of the latency considerations that might come into play.
Yeah, I would just add that the data catalog is a great underlying resource if you're thinking about going down a data fabric approach to your data architecture. And I think it's also an acknowledgement that we have federated architectures and that we do not have anything centralized, especially in these big organizations, like to 100%. So we're going to have to understand how the various architectures work together and make up the fabric of the the fabric of the data architecture. And so It's an abused term. It depends who you talk to as to what this means. I think it's one of these terms that you can look at a really bad data architecture, and it's another label that you can apply to that and say, well, I guess we don't have to do anything because guess what? We're doing a data fabric, and that can work for a while in an organization. So be careful with that. Still do things sensibly no matter what label you're going to put on it. Put data into the right platform to succeed. Make it all work together with data integration and virtualization. And that's what it comes down to. What that schematic looks like, hopefully it looks sensible, but it would tend to look more like a graph database if you're pursuing a data fabric, which I know of nobody who's leaned in totally to this data fabric idea and it's actually influencing their architecture. I just know it is something we talk about.
I love it. Well, that does bring us just past the hour here. So, and I want to thank you both again so much for these great presentations and helping and being so flexible and helping to make them happen. And thanks to our community for being so great. It's just, I really appreciate you guys. And I brag about you all the time and how you've become co-producers and helping each other out and helping me out and making sure everyone's got a great experience. So I really appreciate it. And again, just a reminder, I will send a follow-up email for this webinar by end of day Monday with links to the slides and links to the recording, as well as links to the report as well. So thank you, everybody, so much for hanging in there with us and enjoying this great presentation. I'm so glad that we could make it happen because it was really just fantastic from both of you. Thanks to Looker for sponsoring today and helping make all these webinars happen. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Have a great day.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.